To 1 million cups. I don't know if I'm on the live stream. I'll stand over here. Excellent. Today is going to be a little bit different. Jason sent his apologies. He had a meeting that came up at the last minute. One of the things that came out in our discussion a couple of weeks ago was to do every now and then a 1 million cups that helps businesses rather than someone explaining what their business is. So today is one of those. So Nathan, as well as providing the coffee, which I'm very grateful for Stillman Bank, is going to be our speaker today, talking about what you need to know and get in order if you're a small business before you go to the bank, and then what banking services can offer and how they can help. Just before he speaks, I'm wondering if there's any events that people know about that we can get on the record. I can throw the catch box to you, sponsored by the city of Rockford. Does anyone know of anything that's going on? No. I saw the deep inhale there, Charlie. I didn't know that. Thursday. That's tomorrow. There is something Thursday, but I can't remember what it was. Okay. So there's something Thursday? Google Thursday. Anyone else? Okay. Rockford Social Square. They said that was on the 6th on their Facebook thing. Did they correct it? Because that's today. On their Facebook page, they said that was going to be today. Maybe they corrected it. Okay, so Rockford Social Square is tomorrow, and that is at, where do they meet now? Joseph's. Okay, still at Joseph's. So if you're interested, then go there. Okay, without further ado, Nathan.
Thank you. Well, welcome everybody. Appreciate you coming out today. I started this presentation last night at 11 o'clock. Rob was gracious enough to call me late yesterday and ask me to do this. So we're going to be a little more casual today. As you have questions, feel free to pop them up. I'll try to repeat them so it's noted on the live stream. I started this presentation wanting to get really technical with y'all. You know, Rob just mentioned that, tell you what to bring if you want to get something from the bank and stuff, all that jazz. I'll go over the 5 C's of credit. That's what every bank looks at when they want to know whether they're going to finance something for you. Those are character, capacity, capital, collateral, and conditions. Okay? That's basically how banks look at whether they're going to give you some funding, they're going to invest in your project. It is really got little to do with that when everything's said and done. The relationships you have with your bankers, and I know everybody's afraid of the big bad bank, right? You know, it's these, what is it, the Capital One commercials you see right now, they're all talking about these old stodgy old banks. That's the image everybody has of banking and stuff. What you got to remember is banks just full of people. It's really just the people in your community, whether it's a big bank or a small bank. I happen to work for a small bank. There's big banks in town too. They're all just people in the community trying to help out the community do things. So when you want to go and you want to, start that new business or launch that new product or that new venture, the best thing you can go to the bank with is a business plan. And I hate to use the term business plan because folks will think of that it's only for a business or I'm going to launch this business, so I've got to have a plan for how the business is going to go. Not necessarily. I mean, Josiah, last week you presented about the whole filmmaking industry and stuff and making it more user-friendly to the area. There's a plan for that. It's just a plan of what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, and why it's going to work. That's really what it boils down to. Because if you can't tell that story, it doesn't really matter what you want to do. People aren't going to believe in it, and they're not going to want to put their money in it. They're not going to want to, put their capital on the line for a project that you can't explain to them to a way that they're going to understand what you're doing. They don't have to understand all the minutia. Charlie, you've got a business that I won't say I come even close to understanding when you explain it, but you obviously do. You obviously have a passion for it. And when you explain it, I can understand how it's going to work, how it's going to make money, and it's going to be successful. So you can get behind that. You can understand that investing in it is probably a good idea, because we sit up here and we listen to all these different entrepreneurs talk about what they're going to do. They all have passion for what they do. You have passion for what you do. You have passion for what you do. I know it seems odd. I have a little passion for banking. It's actually a pretty good gig. I do like it. It allows me to be involved in a lot of these different projects, these passion projects that everybody has. That's the beauty of it. So there is some passion in banking. I know it doesn't always seem like it, but there is. So that business plan that explains what you're going to do is critical for anyone that is going to invest in your project, whether it be a bank from a loan or a buddy that is going to put money into it or somebody that has another asset that they want to put in it. You're asking them to step to the plate for your project. They need to understand it. So that business plan is critical. And it's really just your map for where you think you're going to go. There's a really good organization in town, the Small Business Development Group, the SBDC, that does a phenomenal job of helping people do their business plans. And they can help you with all the mapping out, all the minutia of it. I'm not here to do all of that for you, but they can really crystallize or help you crystallize what your plan is, what you're going to do. The biggest thing you can do to help make your business successful is create relationships with people. If you just walk into a bank, and we get this all the time at banking, right? You just walk into a bank, you don't know me from Adam, you walk in and you start telling me this great project, you can even have a great business plan. I don't know you. And people love to do business with people they know. They just do. There's different business models for how you do that and stuff, but building those relationships early before you walk into the bank to do that, different networking groups, different organizations, just going in and talking to the people without the plan, just kind of getting your ideas out there. That is probably the most critical thing you can do. Those relationships, and not just with your bankers. It's with other folks, filmmakers, the disaster recovery folks, the entrepreneurs that are starting their own companies, just all the different people you can know, because everybody knows somebody else, the accountants, they're going to know so many people that can get you connected to someone else, insurance agents, lawyers. Those kind of relationships are critical for helping you get any new business up and started. Those are the two biggest things I would tell you, is building relationships and having a good business plan in place before you start anything. Too many times folks get started they get the cart way before the horse, I guess is how you'd say that, is they're ready, they want money from a bank, they want money from an investor, and they're ready to go. They're ready to start this business because they know it's going to work. And they're going to walk in, they don't know this guy, and they're going to ask him for money. It's probably not going to happen 9 times out of 10, unless you're giving them cash, and if you've already got the cash, you don't need it from the bank or the investor, right? So those are the things that are going to be critical for starting up any business. Obviously, you need the technical skill for whatever you're doing, that kind of stuff. I think that goes without saying, but building those relationships and having a good plan. When you go into a bank, they're gonna ask you for a bunch of information, especially if you're starting a business. If you already have a business, The bank's they're going to look at your past, they're going to see what you've done, and they're going to make a decision on whether they think you can do that going forward. That's what banks do. It flies in the face of what we heard last night at the RADEC annual meeting about the future and looking to the future. But that is the way banks do underwriting. I've worked for a number of banks. I can't speak for every bank. I can only really speak for Stillman Bank. But your history is the best indication of what you're going to do going forward. That's why the banks ask for so much of that historical information when you come in and you ask for financing. Now, if your future is going to look significantly different than your past, that's where that story, that business plan is going to come in really helpful and say, hey, yep, this is where I was, this is where I'm going. You got to be able to tell that story. And that's where that relationship with the banker really helps too, because if he already knows your story and knows what you've been doing, or she, I guess I shouldn't be sexist, right? If they already know your story, when you tell them how you're going to pivot that story, they understand it. They understand how you're going to be able to do that. And they'll be able to explain that to the powers that be if they need to. Dirty little secret of banking. Sorry, Jorge, I'm going to share some secrets of banking today. We don't want anything but your cash. That's what we're looking for. If we give you money, we expect to get paid back. And that's what we're trying to find out. Everything that we get, quite honestly, is to find out if you're going to pay back that money that you got from us. Quite honestly, an investor's going to do the same thing. That's what anyone should do. If they invest something into your entity, your project, they should expect to get some kind of return on that. Otherwise, it's a grant. And as long as everybody understands the terms of that grant, you're okay. But most people aren't just giving grants. They're looking for an investment. They're looking for some kind of return on that investment. If that being said, right, banks want your cash. We want to get paid. Collateral, huge. Again, one of the 5 C's, right, that I mentioned at the beginning of this. And I go into the 5 C's in greater detail later if anyone after the fact wants to talk about it, but it's just boring. I don't want to put anyone to sleep. I might be doing that already, but that is collateral, one of the 5 C's, right? It is the secondary repayment source on most loans. If a bank ever gets to that point, we've lost. You've lost as the business owner, the project leader. We've lost as a financial institution. But we are always going to look for it because we do need that enhancement for what we do. Now, again, I talk about an existing company has history to go with. Here we're talking about entrepreneurs. You don't have that history. I think, your filmmaking industry, that's not some huge thing that we have tons of history for in Rockford, right? Charlie, restoration tools, that didn't exist, right? There weren't tools for the restoration industry. So those projections and that business plan are going to be really critical to getting someone to believe into what you're doing. Well, the nice thing is there's other avenues that are usually done in conjunction with bank investment into your project. And those are in town, a lot of those things through the RLDC, the NICDC, alphabet soup of banking, the SBA. There's a lot of things that us bankers call enhancement that allow us to do things that we typically wouldn't. Because again, what we're trying to do is prove that we're going to get paid back, that we're going to get that cash back from you. The SBA is the Small Business Administration. It's a federal government program that helps support lending. Illinois has a program too. Jorge, do you remember the name of that? Advantage Illinois, thank you. So Advantage Illinois is like the SBA. The SBA is on a federal level. Advantage Illinois is on the state level. I'm sure Wisconsin has something like that as well. Most states do, to get that enhancement to help people get you that funds. Because they do. They want you to start new businesses. They want businesses to grow. the number one employer in the world is small business. They want people to continue starting small business, to continue employing people. So, as many complaints as we may have about the federal and state governments, they do try to do their part to help out. Here in town, in Rockford, we have the Rockford Local Development Corp., which does some financing and enhancement for local lending opportunities. The NICDC, which is Northern Illinois, the CDC, I don't know, Development Corp is the last C, I don't know, but it's the NICDC. It does it in the greater area. RLDC is basically Rockford. The NICDC is the surrounding area. They're both run by the same group of folks, and they both do really good things with helping new businesses and existing businesses that are doing different things expand and move their projects forward. I'm trying to think. I don't want to get too technical today because, again, there's a ton of stuff. We can always talk about that kind of stuff after the fact. I guess I'll leave it with I'll finish up and wrap up here fairly quick and then open it up for questions anyone might have. But the two main goals or two main things I think you need, which aren't even things that you necessarily take to the bank, is have a good plan for what you're going to do. Eventually that will become your business plan that you will bring to the banks or the investors, and build relationships. Those two things will go a long way to allowing you to do whatever you really want to. I mean, there's all kinds of financial stuff that has to go into it, but those two things, relationships with bankers, relationships with accountants, relationships with attorneys, just other business owners, folks you can bounce ideas off of, but folks that can introduce you to other people that can help you with some of your projects. Those are the two biggest things I think you need going into anything you're trying to do. It's tough to do everything by yourself and start it in a garage. It really is, and then get someone else to buy into that doesn't understand it. Tons of other financial information and stuff that the banks are going to need after that, but again, any good accountant can help you with that. They'll help you with projections. They'll help you with any of that kind of stuff that you need. Getting a good accountant is really critical. You guys have heard me say that a number of times in here. Somebody that can help you with planning your future. That's better than a bookkeeper. No offense to any bookkeepers out there listening, but accountants that can help you with that planning, critical. Attorneys that can help you with that planning, critical. I don't want to leave out the insurance agents or the bankers. They can also help with that stuff as well, but they more have a specific product they're kind of trying to do, as opposed to that consultation that you're going to get from attorneys and accountants. So with that, I will open it up to any questions anyone may have specifically. Or
Okay, I'm going to throw around the catch box. To summarize, if I think I've got this right, when you've got an idea, one of the best things you can do is to tell as many people that idea in different networking groups, so that by the time you get to the bank, they've already heard it. Is that about right?
Yeah, for the most part, trusted folks that you do, because if you're going to roll out something that's going to have some kind of patent or so, I think, Charlie, you've got a number of patents, right? You may not want to share all the details, but letting people know that you're thinking about starting something, you're thinking about getting some. So there's some buzz about you, probably, more than the actual product itself. Because then it's your job, once you get to the bank, to sell that product to them.
So what would you say, in your role in banking, how many of the people that come to you have you met or do you know before they come to you? And how does that determine whether they're successful or not in?
I would say the successful ones I usually know beforehand. I've usually met them at something. I know them through somebody else. Usually someone walking off the street just comes into my office blind. They usually don't have a very good plan, and they usually don't have very good financials, to be perfectly honest. But the folks that I know, they've been referred by somebody, or a friend of a friend kind of thing. I've heard that they've got something going on. Those folks, they've been out there, they've been trying to get the different people involved in it that they need to, so that they've got a pretty good team when it's time to go.
Okay. Any questions? Okay, here we go. Oh,
Nope.
you got the coffee.
You're just throwing it like
Little
a rugby.
weak.
I know.
Is it fair to say that banks have their forte in what they want to loan money for?
Oh, gosh, that's a tough question. Yes, I would say, banks get comfortable. Like anything, you get comfortable with what you're doing. But realistically, every bank in town can do everything that any other bank can do. It's what they feel comfortable with, though. If I do a number of disaster recovery folks, right, I'm going to feel very comfortable with the next one shows up. Or I was just driving around this morning and I saw a calibration company that obviously calibrates testing instruments and stuff. If I do a number of them, I'm going to understand that industry much better. So they'll start to get a niche in that. But the beauty of banking in general, and Jorge, you probably back me up on this, is if I have an expertise in one thing, there's somebody else at my organization that has an expertise in something else that they feel really comfortable. For Stillman, I'm a city boy. I know nothing about farming, but we have some experts in farming that if, a farmer came up to me and had a question about something, I would absolutely get them in touch with that person. That expert I have is going to take care of them. It's not going to be me. They have a relationship with me, and that's, again, goes back to that whole success of the relationships. I've known them for years and years for whatever reason. They come to me, hey, I'd like to, finance my farm here. Again, my ignorance of the whole industry. But I've got experts there that understand when they start talking about combines or tractors or beans or heifers or whatever, they're going to know what they're talking about. My eyes are going to roll up in my head and I'm not going to have a clue, right? But that's the beauty at most financial institutions is there's somebody in there that can help. Okay, but every institution has its own reputation about what they do and that kind of thing. That's okay. I'll take the help, brother.
So Nathan, share with them maybe some tips on projections. Yeah. What we like to see on projections, especially when they're putting them in the business plan.
Oh, okay. So the tips on projections. So you're creating this business plan, right? The business plan is the what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, and why it's going to work. A lot of that's going to have a lot of financial stuff in it. It sounds real simple, right? It's not. Which is why we have the SBDC, and it's really good that they're here to help. But the projections, quite honestly, I told you, the banks want to get paid back. Any investor wants to get paid back. I just know banking. They want to know how quickly they're going to get paid back. I mean, I think when we talked about your whatever kind of building and stuff you're going to need for the filmmaking industry, I kind of said, well, here's how many times you're going to have to turn that over. Your projections are, you want to demonstrate to the investor or the banker how quickly you're going to get to break even, how quickly you're going to get to the point where you're now making money. Because it's not just enough necessarily to pay the bank back. We want a return on our money, obviously, but we want to see success in the community as well. So we not only want to get to that break even, obviously want to get through it. You as the business owner want to get there. The projections, typically what you're going to sell, how much you're going to make on it. You're going to want to do it monthly until you get to that break even point. So realistically, you're starting out a new company. I would suggest 5 years of projections. I would hope that most are to at least that break even within the second year. I think is a good rule of thumb to get to. You don't want to be negative for too long. You won't get too many people wanting to invest in that. Month-to-month projections and just showing the fluctuations is usually pretty good for that first 2 years. For the most part, if you do a lot of those enhancement type financings that I talked about, they're going to usually want it for 2 years anyway. So it's a good idea to do it that way. Once you get past that first 2 years, you can typically go annually. You want to be, I always use the term optimistically pessimistic. And one of the reasons being is If you're totally unrealistic in your projections, the first thing a bank's going to do is, this isn't going to work. You have no clue what you're doing, right? So if you're just all pie in the sky, we're going to assume you don't know what you're doing. We're not going to want to get involved in it. And most investors would. But if you go the other way and you're super, super conservative, we're going to say, wow, this isn't going to work. You're never going to make any money, right? So when you give your projections, you need to be somewhat realistic, but you want to be realistic on the positive side, because the first thing we're going to do as bankers is discount it, right? Right, Jorge? That's the first thing we do. We're going to take it and go, okay, this is where you think you're going to be. Well, what if this happens, right? Because again, remember, the bankers want their money. We want to get paid. We don't want your collateral. We don't want anything else. We want money. We want to get paid. So we need to figure out how you're going to pay us. What's the way we're going to get that money from you? So you're going to have your projections up here. First thing we're going to do is slice a big chunk of those off and then see if you can afford to pay this back. So definitely be optimistic, but realistically optimistic. Optimistically pessimistic. You're going to definitely want to do 2 years of probably month-to-month projections. It kind of shows the ebb and flows of what you think is going to go. It demonstrates you have an understanding more than just a general broad understanding of your business. And then after that, you can kind of get into the annual, because, you know, each year will be about the same. Definitely have explanations for why you think certain things are going to happen. And again, this is where attorneys and accountants and bankers and insurance agents and all those people that you're going to hire to help you with this stuff are going to come in handy. You know, if you're in that filmmaking industry, let's say, and you've got that building, you know, talking to your insurance agent. What kind of cost am I going to have? Because there's a lot of technical stuff in that building from what you explained last week. So what's my insurance cost going to be? It's not going to be the same as just a pole barn building, right? So your cost structure for insurance is going to be different than the guy that's just got a warehouse space, even though it's just a big open space, right? So you can do things on, because that's my understanding of it, Josiah. But that's where everybody like that is going to be able to help you, and then you're going to be able to explain that to your banker or investor of, here's how I know this is going to work. And again, the insurance agent, for instance, is going to be able to tell you, here's where we see things going with insurance rates and stuff, you know, obviously up, right? Sorry to any insurance agents out there. That's like taxes, that's where they go. But yeah, I mean, that's what I would do with projections. Detail is good the first few years. Again, it just demonstrates you know what's going on. And that's where, you know, your finance people can really help you with that, some of those numbers. Okay. Anything to add, Jorge?
No, that's right on. Good job.
So it's interesting that you mentioned the relationship part of it in relationship banking. I've heard from some people, or it has been said that it's not based on relationship anymore. What would you say to combat that, or as far as government regulation, or how big of a factor that plays into the game? How important is the relationships with your bankers? Could you touch more on that?
Like anything, I would suggest everything is still relationship based. I mean, think in your own industry, filmmaking, you probably get more jobs through relationships you already have with people than just putting out a website that says, hey, I'm Josiah, come and let me make your films, right? Because they understand what you can do. They understand your product. I mean, I can sit there and watch your product and go, hey, I think he's a great filmmaker. And, again, I've told you I don't know anything about it, right? So you've educated me on that, but there's going to be people that can watch your product and they can understand that you did a really good job on that. And you might get some business that way, but you're going to get more business and more people are going to give you opportunities from relationships that you've made. It's the same way in banking. When you come to me with an idea, I literally had a guy the other day came to me out of the blue, calls me up, says, I need $500,000. I'm like, all right, cha-ching. I get paid more if I do more loans, right? So I'm pretty excited. We're always, and again, Jorge, correct me if I'm wrong, but bankers, the more loans we do, the better off we are. So we'll take every opportunity we can to actually do a loan. But I'll tell you, that guy walking in, didn't know him from Adam. He comes in, he tells me his plan. He doesn't have a plan. He literally has architectural plans. He's already ahead of the game from where we should be in this conversation. And what he basically told me is he wanted to borrow $500,000 from me so he could invest into a project in an industry that he had already failed in. Okay? I'll be honest, I didn't take a ton of time to listen to the rest of his story because he's telling me he wants $500,000 from me. Remember, I want to get that money back and then some, and he wants to invest it in an industry that he's already failed at. If I knew the guy, I would sit and listen, and maybe he's got a better story. So, if I had a relationship with him, if I knew somebody that knew him, I would give him the time of day and say, hey, let's talk about this. But this guy's coming in, and he has no plan. All he has is literally drawings of what he wants to do with my money and invest it in something that didn't work out. I don't have the time to do that. You don't have the time to do that. Nobody has the time to do that in their business. You got to make these calls really quick. And it might sound cold, but it's one of those things where I've got, you're as a salesperson, and you're your own salesperson for your business. You've got to get on to that next sale, the one that's actually going to make you money. That guy came in out of the blue. I don't give him the time of day, realistically. And I hate to say that, but he's come in. His plan that he's got on a basically napkin is give me some money so I can try and do something that I didn't do before. Okay. I listened to him, talked through it, told him I don't believe in what you're doing. We're basically done and let him, move on to the next banker or the next investor. If that guy was referred to me by you and you're like, hey, this guy's wanting to do this and he's got all these plans, he's already talked to you about that, and I know you, and I trust your judgment a little. I mean, I don't trust you to do banking judgments, but I mean, again, I know you. I mean, I know I think every one of you guys. I don't know you yet, but we will. So, I trust most of your judgments and stuff. That if you're telling me, hey, this guy's got a good project and you should listen to it, I'm going to listen to it, and I'm going to try and find a way to do it. Because realistically, what it comes down to in banking is, do I want to try and find a way to do it? Because there's usually a way to do most things, realistically. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong again, Jorge. I'm going to keep looking to you because, my brethren here in banking, you can find a way to do most things. You really can. We may not like what we have to do it, but we can find a way to do most things. But if that guy comes from you, I'm going to say, hey, Josiah referred this guy to me. Maybe I need to listen to what he's doing and help him along the way. So he's going to get some help along the way too, because I'm going to say, hey, you know what? I think you need to go and you need to, talk to these guys, flesh out your business plan. You probably should have done that before you had these drawings and stuff, drafted up and such. But I'm not going to do that for someone that just walks in out of the blue and is way far down the game. I told him, said, you know what, you need a better plan. I mean, I sent him on his way to do that. But if it's someone that I know someone I know, I'm going to give them more time, and we're probably going to look to find something. Like, I could probably find a way to do what he wants to do. The problem is he's not going to want to do that with someone he doesn't have a relationship with. I'm just, Nate Bolin out of the blue that, he just decided to call Stillman Bank and happened to get me, and he came in, and he's not going to give me a bunch of stuff and do half the stuff I'm going to ask him to do that as well. Again, that's just the experience of over 25 years in banking, knowing that I know where this guy's is in his plan, and I know he's not going to do what I need him to do, so we're just going to part ways at this point and save everybody the headaches of trying to go down that road. Because I've been down that road before too, where you're like, oh, this is a great project, let's try this. And you get down the road and you just, people don't work together when they don't have relationships. So I think a little bit of what you're talking about though, Josiah, might be the good old boy lending, where it's like, oh, I know him, so let's just throw some money at him. Yeah, that doesn't really happen because of the regulatory compliance that banks have to deal with. There's a reason that doesn't happen. A lot of people got stuck doing that kind of stuff. It's not the best way to lend. Now, again, it's a good way to start. It's a good way to say, hey, I know this guy. He's a good guy. One of the 5 C's that I alluded to earlier is character. That's where the relationship comes. You can't necessarily measure character. I mean, I can pull your credit and I can see whether you make your payments on time, and that's a quantitative value of your character, but it doesn't tell me who Josiah is and if he's going to step to the plate when I need him to. That's what character really is, and that's where those relationships get started and they get the process moving along. You still have to comply with all the other stuff, but that starts the process and makes the process a lot easier. So.
We've got time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions.
Can you run through the 5 C's real quick?
Sure. All right, 5 C's are character, capacity, capital, collateral, and conditions. And I wrote this down because I didn't want to get the wrong thing. Character is really your reputation, what we just talked about. Are you going to step to the plate if I need you to, right? Capacity is basically your cash flow. That's, are you going to be able to pay this back, right, when everything's said and done? Capital is basically what you have in the game more than anything else. Again, banks and investors like to see you have some skin in the game, as we call it. You should have something to lose. Nothing worse than coming to a bank and going, hey, I need $500,000. I got no money into this. I need to take your money and invest in this so I can make a fortune. Well, why don't I, as an investor or a bank, just invest in that and make the fortune rather than let you make the fortune and I make a little bit on interest? Because I will tell you, the margins in banking are really thin. I know it seems like we charge exorbitant interest rates. We don't. The margins are pretty thin. Collateral, that's our secondary source of repayment typically. That's anything you pledge that basically says, if you don't pay, that's what I get to sell to pay off this loan. I tell you, for the longest time, my kids thought all I ever did was take things from people. Not fun when you have to tell your kids that I had to take that and sell it, and I had to take that and sell it. But that's the nature of the beast in banking. That we make loans to people, and it doesn't say that only if it's good you pay me back. If I make a loan to you, it says you will pay me back, and if you do not, I get this. Every loan says that. And then the last one is conditions. And that's basically the economy or the industry risk that you're in. Not much control over those things. In 2008, we had the real estate crisis, right? The economy for real estate was horrible. So if you wanted a bank to lend you money on real estate, you were probably out of luck. I mean, the industry as a whole kind of pulled back from financing a lot of that. It's nothing that you as an entrepreneur necessarily can do anything about, but it's the economy, it's the risk that we have to look at when we look at things. Industry risk for the filmmaking industry in Rockford is probably on the high end because it's never been done. Once you start doing it to a level that it's an actual industry kind of here in Rockford, then the risk of it will be somewhat mitigated or somewhat lessened. But right now, it's a high risk for your project because it's never been done. That anything new has a higher risk than something that's been done for a while. So that's really the 5 Cs. We can go into them in a lot more detail if you want. Like I said, I started to go real technical with this when I started last night at about 11 o'clock. And I thought, yeah, we won't get into that. But that's what every bank really, or investor, needs to look at because, again, they want to get their funds back with some kind of return on it. That's what they're all looking for.
Thank you very much. Okay, just checking for any more questions. Okay, Nathan, thanks very much. What we're going to do
no
with
problem.
this video and then the one that we had before on how to put together a presentation is put them in a special area on the website so that there are resources that you can look at or point people to that are looking at starting a new company. Okay. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
There's more coffee. Thank you for Stillman.
All right.
And we'll see you next week.
All right. Ugh.